To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of our outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them. To die, to sleep no more, and by asleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die, to sleep perchance, to dream. Aye. There's the rub. The immortal bard Shakespeare wrote that for Hamlet. It's a rather famous speech where Hamlet is contemplating death itself. Of course, Shakespeare was not the first poet to write about death, and he certainly won't be the last. Tonight is Halloween, and right now it's well, it's kind of the daytime, but this is the best time I have to stream, and frankly, there's probably exciting stuff going on later at the day, so it's a good time to do this. And you know what? You want to watch it later? I'll have the VOD available pretty soon. But basically, I've got some poems to read to you that pertain to death in their own way, because that's something that people like to think about at this time of year. It's kind of, horror is very popular, especially around this time of the season. And sort of the key to all horror is really the fear of death, ultimately. Horror pertains a lot to, change. Anything in your life when you're going from a transitional period from one to another and you're kind of unsure. But really, what is the ultimate change is death. Because as familiar as we are with real life, as life as it is, we're not familiar with death. We don't know what comes after. And as Hamlet said, do we continue living as we are, or do we face oblivion? But what comes after death? We don't know that. Perhaps it is an eternal dream, or perhaps it is nothing. There's a lot of poets sort of contemplate that, and maybe we'll explore that today. First, are you staying cozy on this cool Halloween day? I went for a walk earlier, and it's a bit colder today than it was yesterday, which I quite like because, well, if it's a bit too warm, it doesn't really feel seasonal, and October's been getting a lot warmer lately, so it's kind of refreshing to go outside and actually feel, a bit chilly here. Maybe I'm underdressed with just this hoodie. It was a nice brisk walk this morning, with the leaves on the ground, the trees all, red and losing those leaves, as this sort of is a transitional period in time, which sort of pertains to this season, the harvest season, when it's sort of when it's transitioning from summer, which is a very lively season, full of growth and heat and fun activities, to winter, which is very much a very dead season. No leaves on the trees, no grass on the ground, and cold and bitter snow. So it makes sense that this is sort of a season where we like to think about death as it pertains to us, or really, death as it pertains to change. And well, besides Shakespeare, the first poet that we're going to explore today, with just a couple poems, is none other than the poet of death himself, Edgar Allan Poe. Poe had a very tragic life, as you're probably aware, at least casually. A lot of death in his life, and reflected a lot in his poetry. And his writings. He's also a very good writer. But we're just going to be exploring some poetry today. The first poem by him is called "The City in the Sea." Started. Lo! Death has reared himself a throne in a strange city lying alone, far down within the dim west, where the good and the bad and the worse and the best have gone to their eternal rest. Their shrines and palaces and towers, time-eaten towers that tremble not, resemble nothing that is ours. Around, by lifting winds forgot, resignedly beneath the sky, the melancholy waters he. No rays from holy heaven come down, the long night time that is town, of the long night time of that town, but light from out the lurid sea streams up turrets silently, gleams up the pinnacles far and free, up domes, up spires, up kingly halls, up fanes, up Babylon like walls, up shadowy, long-forgotten bowers of sculpture's ivy and stone flowers, up many and many a marvelous shrine, whose wreathed frenzies intertwine the viol, the violet, and the vine. Resignedly beneath the sky, the melancholy waters lie. So blend the turrets and shadows there, that all seem pendulous in the air, while from a proud tower to the town, death looks gigantically down. There opens fanes and gaping graves, yon level with luminous waves, but not the riches there that lie in each idol's diamond eye, not the gainly jeweled dead tempt the waters from their bed, for no ripples curl, alas, along the wilderness of glass. No swellings tell the winds may be upon some far-off happier sea. No heavens hint that winds have known, or that winds have been on seas less hideous, serene. But lo, a stir is in the air, the wave, there is a moment there, as if the towers had thrust aside, in a slightly sinking the dull tide, as if their tops had feebly given a void within the filmy heaven. The waves have now a redder glow, the hours are breathing faint and low, and when, amid no earthly moans, down, down that town shall settle hence, hell, rising from 1,000 thrones, shall do it reverence. If you want some candy, got a big bowl over there by the fireplace. Nice and warm, cozy fire that you think of sleeping. I don't know why. It's just cozy, Kind of has a haunting rhythm, just puts you to sleep. But anyway, I've got some candy by the fire. Let's I don't anyway, you should grab some before it melt. It's a little close to the fire. I kind of don't know what I was thinking. But look at that. There's a Kit Kat there. That's the good stuff. There's well, maybe the Kit Kats stuff, but either way, help yourself to some candy. I know it's a little early for trick or treating, but I guess we're getting that out of the way here. The next poem I have is a second poem by Edgar Allan Poe, and it again has to do with death, although a bit more directly than the last poem, which was, obviously about hell and contemplating what happens after you die, or really, this is called Lenore, and that might sound familiar if you're familiar with Poe, because Lenore was the woman spoke of in probably his most famous work, The Raven, but that's because Lenore, the name comes from from his brother or brother-in-law, a family member of his that died, and poem is also, I think, speculated to be about his wife who also died, or at least his betrothed. I should have done more research. Everyone knows Edgar Allan Poe. I don't have to. Anyway, yeah, this song is named after someone in his life who died, and written about someone in his life. Because Edgar Allan Poe knew a lot about death, as it were, kind of an expert in the subject. But anyway, thus begins Lenore. Broken is the golden bowl, the spirit flow forever. Let the bell toll, a saintly soul glides down the Sigirian river. And let the burial rite be read, the funeral song be sung, a dirge for the most lovely dead that ever died so young. And, Guinevere, hast thou no tear? Weep now or nevermore. See, on yon drear and rigid bier, low lies thy love Lenore. Yon heir, whose cheeks of pallid hue, whose tears are streaming wet, sees only through the crocodile dew a vacant coronet. False friends, ye loved her for her wealth, and hated her for her pride, and when she fell in feeble health, ye blessed her that she died. How shall the ritual then be read, the requiem how be sung, for her most wronged of all the dead that ever died so young? Peccavimus, but rave not thus, and let the solemn song go up to God so mournfully that she may feel no wrong. But the sweet Lenore hath gone before, with young Hope at her side, and thou art wild for the dear child that should have been thy bride, for her the fair and debonair, and now so lowly lies, the life still there upon her hair, the death upon her eyes. Avaunt, tonight, my heart is light, no dirge will I upraise, but waft the angel on her flight with a paean of old days. Let no bell toll, lest her sweet soul, amid its hallowed mirth, should catch the note, as it doth float up from the damned earth to friends above. From fiends below, the indignant ghost is riven, from grief and moan to a gold throne beneath the King of Heaven. Next is something a bit more lighthearted. We're going to be reading an excerpt of the beginning of Goblin Market by Christina Rossetti. A poem from the same era as Poe. Most of the poems I've selected from the 1800s, sort of the kind of the classical era, shall we say, of more modern but still a bit older poetry. I mean, it might be a little odd to call the 1800s modern, but that's how it go. That's how it kind of goes with art, or at least art history. The 1800s is really sort of the beginning of impressionism and a bit more experimentation. The old rules sort of being and I mean, it is still the Victorian era, and things were still very restricted at the time. For example, Goblin Market, which was very controversial at the time. It's written sort of as a moralistic sort of Grimm's fairy tale about two girls, sisters, who are every day accosted by these horrible goblins that live by the river and just want to tempt them with their succulent and delicious fruits. And I guess I won't really go into the ending because maybe you could read it yourself. It's available online. All of these poems are. They're very old, very classic poetry. But oh, what? A subscriber? Get out of here! Oh my god! Thank you, Rocky. I was not expecting that. Oh man.
Miss Rocco joined the pizza party.
Oh yeah, that I kind of threw that together because I wasn't really anticipating anyone to subscribe, but I had to have something. I've barely any emails for you. I'm sorry, but I'll work on it some more. Anyway, but yes, thank you, Rocky. You just got here. Well, that's great. I'm about to start Goblin Market. I guess the fourth poem, if we're counting in a bit of Shakespeare at the start. But this is gonna be a fun one. This is gonna be a fun one. Ahem. Morning and evening, maids heard the goblins cry, "Come buy our orchard fruits, come buy, come buy! Apples and quinces, lemons and oranges, plump unpacked cherries, melons and raspberries, boom down cheeked peaches, swarthurt mulberries, wild freeborn cranberries, crab apples, dewberries, pineapples, blackberries, apricots, strawberries, all ripe together in summer weather, morns that pass by, fair eves that fly, come buy, come buy, our grapes fresh from the vine, pomegranates full and fine, dates and sharps, bullaces, rare pears and green gages, damsons and bilberries, taste them and try, curds and gooseberries, bright fire like barberries, figs to fill your mouth, citrons from the south, sweet to tongue and sound to eye, come buy, come buy. Evening by evening, among the brookside rushes, Laura bowed her head to hear, Lizzie veiled her blushes, crouching close together, in the cooling weather, with clasping arms and cautioning lips, with tingling cheeks and fingertips. Lie close, Laura said, pricking up her golden head. We must not look at goblin men, we must not buy their fruits. Who knows upon which soils they fed? Their hungry, thirsty roots. Come by, called the goblins, hobbling down the glen. Oh, cried Lizzie, Laura, Laura, you should not peep at goblin men. Lizzie covered up her eyes, covered close, lest they should look. Laura reared her glossy head, whispered like the restless brook. Look, Lizzie, down by the glen. Tramp little men, one hauls a basket, one bears a plate, one lugs a golden dish of many pounds weight. How fair the vine must grow, whose grapes are so luscious, how warm the winds must blow through those fruit bushes. No, said Lizzie, no, 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 their offers should not charm us, their evil gifts would harm us. She thrust a dimpled finger in each ear, shut eyes and ran. Curious Laura chose to linger, wondering at each merchant man. One had a cat's face, one whisked a tail, one tramped at a rat's pace, one crawled like a snail, one leapt like a wombat, prowled obtuse and furry, one like a rattle tumbled, hurry, scurry. She heard a voice, like voice of doves, cooing all together. They sounded kind and full of loves in their pleasant weather. So I suppose you could imagine where that poem goes from there. but it's very long. We definitely will cut it off there. It does speculate. I mean, death is of course, a subject about it because it is very written like a moralistic Grimm's fairy tale where death is very much a consequence of doing the against the morals. That is to say, accepting the goblin men's fruits. But I shan't go into exactly how that happens, because that would spoil the poem. I'll be honest. Goblins could sweet talk me. I'm not very resistant to goblin charms, but who is? They're magically charmed. What really can you say about goblins? Especially with such sweet voices that they have, calling their sweet fruits. Let's see here. Probably pretty easy to guess, but all my keyboard playing is improv. I don't have anything prepared. And it's on a pretty old keyboard, a Yamaha PSR 16. It is from the time before sampled voices. For example, here's the quote unquote piano of this thing. Let's see where it's at. Oh, there it is. Yes. Here's the piano. Yeah, it's an FM synth. And it actually has a digital synthesizer. So like, let's hear that piano with a little bit more oomph. So yeah. Anyway, the next poem is a little bit later than the Victorian era, where most of what we're pulling from is from. It's called "The Second Coming" by William Butler Yeats, and I picked it because I just really love this poem. It was written as a response to World War One, which at the time was known as the Great War, the war to end all wars, the war where death was just an absolute just such an absolute world-changing event of all this pointless war where so many young men died and the world changed, or at least so they thought it did. And fortunately, there was a second world war, but yeah, there were a lot of art movements to come from the First World War, such as Die Brücke and Dadaism, as you may be familiar with. They're kind of Die Brücke and Dada are kind of they have the same message, but they're the inverse of each other. I'm more familiar with visual art history, but Die Brücke was very much the world is pointless, so our art must be nihilistic and devoid of all meaning and just absolutely dour, dark, impressionistic charcoal, and just the you know, the absolute darkest of imagery, whereas Dada was, well, the world is pointless, so there's no real point to our art, and we will just make complete absurdist expressions and just, there's no meaning, so why worry about it? Let's just celebrate the end of all meaning and the end of all reason. Have a great time. Dadaism did start as a writing movement. There's some famous Dada poetry and other writings before it became a more visual thing, as you may be familiar with. I don't have any Dada poetry because I didn't look any up. Because this was all improv. It's kind of came off the top of my head because I'm just was thinking about World War One and art movements. But anyway, The Second Coming by Yeats. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loose upon the world. The blood-dimmed time is loosened, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming! Hardly are those words out when the vast image of Spiritus Mundi troubled my sight. Somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with a lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless in the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all about it, real shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again. Now I know. The 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle, and what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. Essentially taking the classic imagery of the second coming of, oh, Jesus is going to come and save the world, and really sort of saying that the second coming came and it was mankind, and sort of this great war. Let's never do that again. And they never did. The next poet we're going to be exploring is Emily Dickinson, and she's another very famous poet. As I'm sure we all know, she was a sort of a recluse character. She had a well-off family, but which is sort of how she was able to live and shut herself off and write tons and tons and tons of poetry, which wasn't really discovered until after her death. She had, I think, like 2 or 3 things that were published during her lifetime, and the rest was found post-mortemly and published later. And her work was very controversial even after her death when it was found. And there were many different forms of censure or changing of words or whatever, but a very common theme of her writings were of death and immortality and sort of the contemplation of that. There were also, interestingly, there were several poems of hers that were dedicated to her sister-in-law. So a lot of people have speculated that maybe she was closetly attracted to her, shall we say? Speculating a lesbian pining, as it were. But in that time, if you're experiencing that, there's really not much else you can write about except for death and love and dying and rebirth. The first poem by her is called "Because I Could Not Stop for Death."
Excuse me.
Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. Carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. We slowly drive, he knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too, for his civility. We passed the school where children strove at recess in the ring. We passed the fields of gazing grain. We passed the setting sun, or rather, he passed us. The dews drew quivering and chill. Only gossamer, my gown, my tuppet, only tulle. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. Since then, 'tis centuries, and yet feels shorter than the day. I first surmised the horses' heads were towards eternity. The second poem by Dickinson is called I Died for Beauty, but was scarce. I died for beauty, but was scarce, adjusted in the tomb, when one who died for truth was lain in an adjoining room. He questioned softly why I failed. For beauty, I replied, and I for truth, themselves as one, we brethren are, he said. And so, as kinsmen met at night, we talked between the rooms, till the moss had reached our lips and covered up our names. There we go. This poem felt familiar. I don't know. I mean, I've read all these ahead of time. Something about it kind of rings to me. I don't know. Next one. Should we do it? Do we want to listen? Do we want to read an excerpt from the Rime of the Ancient Mariner? And I do mean an excerpt because it's a long sort of epic-y poem by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, but it's a classic. They're all classics. All these poems are classics. But yeah, the rhyme tells the story of a mariner who was sailing in a ship of other mariners. So I guess, well, you'd think he's not exceptional. He's the mariner from the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, and he's telling a story to a young man who's on his way to a wedding. He's just this wretched old, gnarled old man who's telling the story to this young man about how up to this point, basically the ship he was on was lost at sea until an albatross came up ahead and led the ship to where they needed to go. And the rest of the crew was thankful to this albatross, but he, the mariner, took his crossbow and he shot the albatross because food was scarce. And everyone thought, well, this is stupid. Like, why'd you do that? This thing was an omen of our health. And he's like, well, I just wanted it's an albatross. And anyway, very shortly after that, their winds died, and the chill came across the air, and they got a lot colder, and we're starting to run out of food a lot sooner than expected. And well, let's just say the term an albatross around your neck comes from this poem. because as punishment for these horrible things happening, they made him wear the corpse of the albatross that he shot down, his crossbow. But all right, we'll start with our excerpt as let's just say things aren't going too well for this ship. There passed a weary time. Each throat was parched and glazed each eye. A weary time, how glazed each weary eye. When looking westward, I beheld a something in the sky. First it seemed a little speck, and then it seemed a mist. It moved, and took at last a certain shape I wist. A speck, a mist, a shape I wist, and still it neared and neared. As if it dodged a water sprite, it plunged and tacked and veered. With throats unslaked, with bright lips baked, we could nor laugh nor wail. Though utter draught, all dumb we stood. I bit my arm, I sucked the blood, and cried, "A sail! A sail!" With throats unslacked, with black lips baked, agape they heard me call, "Gramercy!" They for joy did grin, and all at once their breath drew in. And as they were drinking all, "See, see," I cried, "she tacks no more, hither to work us weal. Without a breeze, without a tide, she steadies with upright keel." The western wave was all aflame, the day was well nigh done. Almost upon the western wave rested the broad, bright sun, when the strange shape drove suddenly betwixt us and the sun. And straight the sun was flecked with bars. Heaven's mother sent us grace. As if through a dungeon grate he peered, with broad and burning face. Alas, thought I, and my heart beat loud, how fast she nears and nears. Are those her sails that gleam in the sun, like restless gossameres? And though her ribs, through which the sun did peer as through a grate, is that woman and all her crew? Is that death? And are there too? Is death that woman's mate? Her lips were red, her look was free, her locks were yellow as gold, skin was white as leprosy. The nightmare, life and death was she, who sticks man's blood with cold. The naked hulk alongside came, and the twain were casting dice. "The game is done, I've won, I won," quoth she, and whistles thrice. The sun's rim dips, the stars rush out. At one stride comes the dark, with forehead whisper o'er the sea. Of Shachi's spectre bark. We listened and looked sideways up. Fear thy heart, as at a cup my lifeblood seemed to sip. The stars were dim, and thick the night, and steersman's face by his lamp gleamed white. From the sails and dew did dip, till clomb above the eastern bar a horned moon, with one bright star within the nether tip. One after one, by the star-dogged moon, too quick for groan or sigh, each turned his face with ghastly pang, and cursed me with his eye. 4 times 50 living men, and I heard no sight nor groan. Heavy thump, a lifeless lump, they dropped down one by one. The souls from their bodies fly, they fled to bliss or woe, and every soul, as it passed me by, like the whiz of my crossbow. Hello, Krista. Welcome to the Halloween special. Next, we have a poem by Charles Baudelaire. Charles Baudelaire, a French poet. So this is, like all the other poems so far, this one is translated. And Charles Baudelaire has been translated many times by many different writers, some more successful than others, because he has a very interesting, visceral form of writing that, like, has been... People have speculated that maybe he has synesthesia, or can just write perfectly like he does. The way he just describes things, kind of ethereal. We're going to start by Spleen by Charles Baudelaire, which might sound familiar if you're familiar with electronica music from the 60s. Ruth White, a pioneer in the early days of electronic music, had, well, the poems we're going to be read by Charles Baudelaire are from his book, The Flowers of Evil, which is also the name of a Ruth White album where all the lyrics come from Charles Baudelaire. So this might sound familiar if you're familiar with her, or at least this is a different translation. I couldn't find the exact translation that she had, but that doesn't matter. We just enjoy this one. Spleen by Charles Baudelaire. When the low, heavy sky weighs like a lid on the spirit, aching for the light, and all the wide horizon's line is hid by a black day sadder than any night. When the changed earth is but a dungeon dank, where the bat-like hope goes blindly fluttering, and, striking wall and roof and molded plank, bruises his tender head and timid wing. When the grim prison bars stretch down the thin, straight, rigid pillars of the endless rain, the dumb throngs of infamous spiders spin their meshes in the caverns of the brain. Suddenly, bells leap forth into the air, hurling hideous uproar to the sky, as 'twere a band of homeless spirits who fare through the strange heavens, wailing stubbornly. Then hearses, a drum or instrument, files slowly through my soul. Crushed, sorrowful, weeps hope and grief, fierce and omnipotent, plants his black banner on my drooping skull. The next poem by Charles Baudelaire again is called The Carcass. Give me 1 second. I have some throat-soothing tea, which definitely is certainly helping because this is a lot of talking. But you'll have to excuse me if I stumble the words a little bit. I do have a little trouble with readings. I have a slight dyslexia. So if I'm a little unsure of a line and have to do another read, just bear with me. But it's not. But thank you all for showing up. I'm glad that got some people watching and enjoying this holiday ambience. Like I said before, and especially if you're just tuning in afterwards, please take a piece of candy from the bowl. They're a little close to the fire; they might melt soon. So they're nice and warm for you. They should warm you up. So take come on and take a piece, and maybe warm yourself up by the fire. It's pretty nice, isn't it? Like, just kind of look at it. Anyway, the next poem is called The Carcass. Remember that object we saw, dear soul, in the sweetness of a summer morn. At a bend the path, a loathsome carrion, on a bed with pebbles strewn, with legs raised like a lustful woman, burning and sweating poisons, it spreads open, nonchalant and scornful, its belly ripe with exhalations. The sun shone onto the rotting heap, as if to bring it to the boil, and tender a hundredfold vast nature, all that together she had joined. And the sky watched that superb carcass like a flower blossom out. The stench was so strong that on the grass you thought you would pass out. Flies hummed upon the putrid belly, whence larvae in black battalions spread, and like a heavy liquid flowered along the tattered delisquitzing. Altogether it unfurled and rose like a wave, and bubbling it sprang forth. One might have believed that, with a faint breath filled, the body, multiplying, lived. And this world gave out a strange music, like of running water and of wind, or of a grain in a winnow, rhythmically shaking and tossed. Form was erased, all but a vision, a stretch slow to take shape on a forgotten canvas, which the artist finishes from memory alone. Behind the rocks, a fretting bitch looked at us with a fierce mane, anxious to retrieve from the corpse a morsel that she had dropped. Yet to this rot you shall be like, this horrid corruption. Stars of my eyes, son of desire, you, my angel and my passion. Yes, such you shall be, you, queen of all graces, after the last sacraments, when you go beneath the grass and waxy flowers to mold among the skeletons. Then, O my beauty, you must tell the vermin, as it eats you up with kisses, that I have preserved the form and essence divine of my decayed loves. Oh, there we go. The next poem is a bit more jovial. It's it's The Jabberwocky by Lewis Carroll. As you know, writer of Alice in Wonderland and Alice in the Looking Glass, and a lot of math textbooks at the time. But he kept those lives pretty separate. Shall we say, a bit of an oddball writer for fun. As we all tend to be, all of us artists, we kind of have to toil in at our normal jobs, and even if it's something we do like doing, we also need a little bit of time to dedicate to madness. And The Jabberwocky is a poem inside of, I forget which Alice book. It might be from Alice in Wonderland, but it is as much about death as, any of these other poems. Superficially, it's supposed to be sort of a epic story of a hero vanquishing a monster, but it is written in a certain way where that it becomes pretty obvious that it's kind of poking fun of that aspect. But here we go, The Jabberwocky. This one you're definitely going to have to bear in mind with me on the readings of it, but 'twas brillig, and the slithy toes did gyre and gimble in the wabe, all mimsy was the borogroves, and mome raths outgrabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch, beware the Jubjub bird, and shun the fruminous Bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the Maxtome foe he sought, so rested he by the Tumtum tree, and stood a while in thought. And, as in oofish thought he stood, the Jabberwock, with eyes of flame, came whiffling through the tungly wood, and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through the vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumping back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. O frab joyous day, Callooh, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy tomes did gyre and gimble in the wabe, all mimsy were the borogroves, and mome raths outcrave. Thank you, Juniper. And so, speaking of death, I do have some bad news for you. We only have one more poem. And so, the stream, like all things, come to an end soon. But I assure you, the last poem is good. Well, they've all been very good. All these poems are been fun to read and fun to look up. And I hope that you've enjoyed hearing the readings of them. It's kind of fun and interesting for me to do. Well, for various reasons, I usually work all the week, Monday through Friday, but I took today off for unrelated reasons well, kind of related. But basically, I had the day off, so I thought, well, shoot, I should do a Halloween special, because why not? Because I have the day off, and I got the time to do a short little Halloween stream to get something sort of in the mood. So, I kind of came up with this, and I've been working on it all week, because I literally didn't have, I didn't think about this until Monday, and kind of had to throw all this together. But I think it's been a lot of fun, and I'm glad people came out and hung out with me. But here it is, the final poem, and it is in fact mysterious. Without really giving much of an introduction. Let me read it. And here they lie, so soft and bound, buried in the worming ground, free from life, in a way, free from pain and what people say. May they rest so soft and cool. Maybe we are the fool to continue life, but who's to say? Our time comes in its own way. They were taken in their sleep to an endless rest, no time to weep. As the fires licked their bed and home, they never woke, they never groaned. As smoke grew heavy and fires hot overtook their bedded cot, and here they rest, ease of mind, while what we buried, what we could find. You know why that's a strange poem? Because it's on my gravestone!